excited to have Lydia here tonight. She is an absolutely accomplished horsewoman that has done every discipline that you can think of, which includes natural horsemanship. And maybe some of you know her already or have used her services. She also does equine therapy as well as
massage therapy,
excuse me, and is trained in chiropractic by
actually myofascial release, and studied under David Kamen to understand massage therapy better about bone, muscle, tissue connection. But I'm not a chiropractor.
Right, she had to talk about that. And a very important point too, she and 3 other ladies actually founded FRC back in the 90s.
Yes, I'm one of the originals, yes. And some of you may remember the name Pinkney Samlin, Conkrin, and then Alice Vitorini, now Alice Vaughn, and Martha Love, and myself. We were one of the original founders, and I actually did the design, the first design, when it was called the Foothills Dressage and Combined Training Association. And I actually did the mountain thing, and I did this in a barbaric way with plastic and pens, and I actually did the first, the little symbol. Yeah. So I'm so happy to see that this is going on. I'm very proud of all of you. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think I just let it go ahead. Here we go. It makes it much easier on me.
Okay, much easier. Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, too. I see. That's good to see. We need more men in this community. I'm here to talk to you about natural horsemanship. And I don't know how much you know about it. How many people have had an experience with it? Okay, so everybody. All right, so this is good. However, I don't think, what I'm going to tell you, and I wrote this format out, and I thought, you know, how should I do this? Because I want you to come away from this seminar with a little bit more knowledge. I think too many people are used to seeing natural horsemanship, using tools, doing this, doing that. They get a little discouraged, but they don't understand the theory, the history, and the method. So I'm going to, as you teach a child step by step, and it's brief, I'm going to go through the steps of natural horsemanship, the steps to understand it, before we go into tools and technique and methods, because you have to understand that to get it. And you have to hear it over and over to say, oh, that's what that means. Because it's really, I think, when it comes to natural horsemanship, I think the word is natural is overused. I think everything that we do with horses is not natural. Let's face it, we put them in box stalls. They're clipped. We're not allowed to have their hair grow at the right time of year and do what they're supposed to do to keep the immune system actually healthy. So we have to blanket the hell out of them. And then you blanket them, and now they're all like bound up. So now you're interrupting with their physical body. So, you know, and again, that's up to you. You know, if you spent $100,000 on a horse and you're doing Grand Prix, well, you know, you're going to have to be a little careful. But you can then use some of these methods to take away some of the angst, the fear, and the anxiety in horses. So this is where it can help. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to read some of it, talk to you about it, open it for questions and answers, and I'm going to show you some of these tools. So to learn, first to understand natural horsemanship, you have to understand the history of it, where it first emerged. Of course, it goes back to even the Roman era, but not the way we know it, and that's about 1980s. And this was a reaction to traditional horse training methods that they relied on force and punishment. And it was inspired by horsemen such as the old cowboys of the West and the vaqueros from Mexico. And the reason being is they had a deep respect for their horses, and they treated them with a lot of kindness and understanding because they ran their ranches. And so they had to kind of like, this is my partner. So that's kind of how this all happened. The principles of it, okay, the principles of natural horsemanship are based on the idea that horses are herd animals and respond best to clear and consistent communication. Natural horsemanship focuses on developing a partnership with the horse based on trust, respect, rather than dominance and control. So when we're talking about the communication, they're a herd animal. So if you have any horses at home and you watch the communication, please do. Stay out there for a while. You'll learn a lot. We have to learn how to speak their language a little bit more. And it emphasizes the importance of understanding the horse's body language, behavior, psychology, and using this knowledge to communicate with the horse. That's what natural horsemanship should be about, using that knowledge. And it's kind of sometimes goes away. It's the only way you're going to be effective with using the method. The techniques of natural horsemanship employs a variety of techniques, and it's to develop a partnership with the horse. These techniques include groundwork such as lunging, round penning, as well as riding techniques such as natural aids that are lightness. And when I say lunging, I do not mean going in circles. Okay, it's a little bit different, and I'll explain that a little bit more. And round penning, I've seen more abuse done in a round pen than you can imagine. It's not about wearing your horse out. It's one thing about a horse having some energy and letting him play, but that has to stop after a while. Or if you have a thoroughbred, he'll run himself right out of the round pen. So you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of your horse. Okay, and this is all, and the round pen is used to develop some confidence with the horse. It gives you a little bit of advantage. Let's face it, if you try to do this the first time out in an open field, horse is gone. You're not going to keep up with it. But you also have to know the dance in a round pen. You don't want to crowd the horse. You don't want to he has to have an out, and too many people don't understand that. When you put them in this circular ring and you're working with them, you've got to give them an opportunity when they feel stressed. They have to have a passage to leave, and I'll explain that a little bit, and you could ask questions about that. So some of the other training methods. Okay, natural horsemanship is not the only approach to horse training, and it's important to understand the different methods may be appropriate for different horses and handlers. Some people prefer to use the traditional method, fine, while others prefer to use more positive reinforcement training. That's what natural horsemanship is. It's about positive reinforcement. It is important to choose a training method that is appropriate for your horse's personality and temperament and his needs. So you have to understand a little bit about the behavior of the horse. What is the horse all about? Well, the horse has evolved a great deal. His instincts, he's very instinctive. You have to align your training with his instincts. And you'll establish a much more, a better communication with the horse if you understand his instincts. So the horse, scientifically, he's been around about 55 million years, and he was a multi-toed animal, and now we know him as a single-toed animal. So 55 million years ago. I didn't say this. This is science talking. And the domestication of the horse is about 5,500 years, and what they use the domestication of the horses is used for travel, warfare, agriculture. Basically, that's what they were used for. Now it's a little different. We want them as a partner. How do we do that? So they're herd animals by structure. So horses naturally, they are herd animals, and they have a very strong social structure. So in the wild, they live in groups, and they usually they're among a dominant mare with the stallions to protect this band. Understanding the dynamics is very important for natural horsemanship because you have the natural instinct. The horse has a natural instinct to seek leadership with a hierarchy. Most horses want one leader. And if you have the horse that's a leader, you're going to have to prove to him that you could be above his leadership, but in a way that will work, and you won't erode a relationship. That's a fact. So their flight response and prey animal instincts, they have evolved as a prey animal. So their instincts for survival are deeply ingrained. So this fight and flight, that it's a response that's highly developed in them, making them sensitive to perceived threats or danger. So yes, your horse may see a butterfly and you go, oh silly, there's a butterfly, but that's not what the more intelligent the horse is, the more he's alert. And maybe those things will happen, but then the more intelligent he is and the more you know how to use the horsemanship, he will be on your side. He'll trust you then as his leader. So the communication that they have is through body language. So if you look at your herd, or even if you don't have one at home, or you watch a movie or watch something, there's plenty of YouTube videos on this. And the horse primarily communicates through his body language by using his ears, his posture, his tail, facial expressions, squinting the eyes, blowing out nostrils. Pay attention to that, because that is how they communicate. And the more you understand that language, you will be more proficient in using natural horsemanship. So you got to understand the psychology of a horse if you're going to use natural horsemanship. So this is what natural horsemanship emphasizes, to understanding the psychology and the thought process of the horse. They respond best to a consistent, fair, respectful training methods. And I don't mean that it's cookie baby, kiss my nose, all this. That's not what they want. They want a sound leader, a thoughtful leader. Because you also have it in the horse world. There are some leaders in the horse world that are pain in the neck. And they'll go after horses, but then usually nobody invites them in. They're all by themselves. But they'll get in there, disperse the herd. They're imbalanced. I hate to tell you, there are some of those. So by incorporating all these understandings and knowing the horse's origin and his instincts and behavior into the natural horsemanship techniques, handlers can then establish a deeper connection, build the trust, and create a willing partnership with their horses. The focus is on working with a horse's nature, not against it. As soon as you try that, you're not going to win. And you're going to allow for a much more effective and cohesive training experience. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the techniques that we use. So we talked about ground exercises, the lunging, round penning, long lining, liberty work. This is all to establish communication and respect. So the lunging, what is lunging? I mean, most people, when you see lunge, they put a horse on a circle, tell them to go, and you usually see, and they're going, and they're going, and they're going. To lunge a horse, for me, lunging or groundwork, if I'm going to lunge a horse, I do not want to stay in one circle. And I don't want to stay in one direction more than 4 or 5 repetitions. The horse sees things, he does not have a binocular vision, he's monocular. So he does not have that membrane that connects the picture. So he sees out of one eye at a time. So it would behoove you, when you're working with your horse, to think about the circles that you're making and try to get them a little bit more even, and don't bore your horse by doing 100 in one direction. Change a lot. Because even a horse who's a little bit out of his mind, the more you change, like when I get a horse that's just a little out there and he's just not focusing, and he understands certain techniques that I've taught him, I will use a system up and down the ring where he has to change, change, change. At the walk, if he wants to trot, he can trot. If he wants to canter, he can canter. But I stay the same. It's a dance. I keep asking him, go forward with me, watch me, and change. And then he starts to relax, and when I get that from him, we stop. And to know if your horse is relaxing or not, you have to pay attention to his breathing. When your horse starts to blow out, snort, blow out, and we don't mean snort like he sees something and he's jumping out of his skin, but when he starts to, he is starting to get rid of the tension and relaxing. And sometimes doing less is better. When you feel that, that's when your body starts to melt down. And then the horse starts to look at you. And then he starts to wonder, But if you stay the same, they go around mindless. So you do have to learn how to raise your energy, drop your energy. That's what they notice. The handler's energy is very relevant. That is very, very important. And you have to see it done by professionals, people that know what they're doing, in order to practice it correctly. Getting on YouTube and trying to learn all these techniques by yourself, don't do it. Save yourself the time and the trouble. Get somebody to help you do it. Do it the right way. And you do it in baby steps. Baby steps. That's how you should do it. And again, we talked about the body language. There's also a technique called pressure and release. And the pressure and release, and Buck Brannaman, he is one of the best about pressure and release. His pressure could be like a butterfly landing on your skin, and a horse gives you a response, and the release is like, whoosh, you do nothing. That is true pressure and release, and we have to learn that. Now, does that mean sometimes a horse is really bracing against my pressure, and I may have to hold for a while until I have something? It may not be a complete release of the horse's whole body, but it's an ear. It's a movement of an eye. You have to let go. Even if it's still a little strong, you have to pick up the slightest try. Has anybody seen Buck Brannaman work horses here? Have anybody seen in person? Yeah. Okay. And I mean, also years ago, when he was so good. You know, I haven't seen him recently, but boy, 15 years ago when I first saw him here, a long time ago, and he went over to Weaver Ridge Farm. He had a good relationship with Weaver Ridge Farm, and he would come regularly, and he came here years ago. And I couldn't wait. I'd get up early in the morning with my little breakfast and sit there and watch him as he's bringing his horses out. I'm the only one sitting in those stands. So he'd go, "Good morning." I said, "Good morning." And I had my papers, I'm writing notes down, watching everything he's doing. He said, "What's your name?" I said, "Lydia." I said, "Okay." And he's doing his thing. All these people start coming in. Next day, you know, go back again, next day after that. So he said, "So Lydia, what did you learn?" I said, "How did you remember my name? You know, all these people all over the place." But, you know, it was very important to be an observer. When you go to clinics, and this is one of the things I like to do, is sit by myself. When you're going with friends, tell your friends to shut up and listen. I'm serious, because you're there to learn. Whether it's good or bad, you have to learn. And you have to watch some of the best do what they do. And suck it in like a sponge. It's very important. We need this. We really do. With what's happening with the way we're breeding horses, crossbreeding, overbreeding, you know, we're breeding superstars. They're bigger than their brains. You know, their feet are going faster than their emotions. This can help you. This can help you in every riding discipline possible. So, and what we call natural aids on a horse can be your body. And that means the way you ride. Your seat, your leg, and your hands. You don't need draw range. You don't need side reins. And I know this from being a massage therapist with horses. I can almost tell when I watch a horse move if he's been trained at a young age, and I've seen him maybe a year later, and then he's been regularly on side reins or draw reins. They can never break at the pole properly. When you're riding a dressage horse, or even a well-balanced horse, when he wants to get up and be balanced, the highest point on that horse should always be the pole when he's performing. Never the second and third vertebra. You're already going to start a problem. And that's just telling you a little bit about body works. So, and that also affects them mentally. When you start breaking that pole there, it changes their belief in themselves, their posture. Posture is very important. As we talked about in a herd, posture is one of the things that they communicate with. So be aware of that. Okay, so moving on. What else is it good for? Problem solving. Why is my horse behaving this way? He's weaving, he's frantic. So you have to find out the root of a problem, and rather than deal with it through punishment, find out what's going on. What can you do to change his mind, take his mind off of it? Horses that are kept in stalls 20 hours a day, I'm sorry, not good. I have a farm, and I worked, my background goes from Connecticut, Westchester County, and I have worked with Bruce Davidson, I have worked with Denny Emerson. I mean, you name them, I've worked with them. In Westchester County, in Greenwich, Connecticut, that's where they all came. Boom. Robert Dover, boom. And I have to tell you, I had a 3-day event barn, but those horses were out 20 hours a day. And they said, "How can you let them all out?" They were out in the herd. You know, the ones that got along, we separated a little bit, we put them with horses, but I had this farm that had these beautiful hills up north, And I never, ever want to have my horses in 20 hours a day. It's just not healthy, unless your horse has some physical problems or whatever. It's just not healthy for them. So where I live now, here, after having 3 or 4 farms in New York and Connecticut, the situation I have here, my horses have free access. They have a 12 by 12 stalls, they have a courtyard, and they have their own pasture, because I do have clients that say, no, I can't have my horse out with anyone. So we're looking now, and as we get new horses in, we're trying to figure out who's going to get along with who. Can we start a herd group? Because I have 45 acres, and I've got about 20 of them that isn't a huge field, and they could figure it out. Get the back shoes off, they'll figure it out, unless they're totally mentally bankrupt. And then I feel sorry for you. But it is the best thing for them if you can find another horse for them to go out with. They need tactile touch. They have to have that a little bit, unless then you are going to have to deliver a lot more for them. And not saying that it's possible for everyone. You may be in a place that just doesn't allow that. So if it's not, then you have to be their partner. You have to satisfy some of those needs so that you have a partnership with them. So getting to some of the people that have kind of helped out, designed or created Natural Horsemanship, that was the original, and some of you may have heard of him, is Tom Dorrance, the Dorrance brothers, Bill and Tom. I think one died in 1999 and the other one in 2009. They were phenomenal, and they were gentle. It was all about understanding the horse. Then you had Ray Hunt, who studied under the Dorrance brothers. And thank you, Ray Hunt, because then he brought it out and he traveled and kind of went all over the world talking about natural horsemanship. And his thing was all about timing, feel. And he was very good. And he was a master rider, too. He can ride a horse in a round pen with no bridle on, you know, after doing what he had to do. But he was a genius at this. He was very athletic. He could do it. Am I going to do it? No. I'll make sure that I get everything done and get some young jockey on so my eyes can say, okay, move your butt this way because you're going to be in trouble in 2 seconds if you don't. But yeah, do I get on some of these horses? Of course I do. But I'm not a fool. I'm going to also be very smart and very wise. You get wiser the older you get. There's no reason to ride a horse out of misery. So when you have horses that are not doing very well, don't understand what's going on, somebody says, just ride them through it. Not always good. It's a 50-50 chance you're going to make it. Don't need to. You can do it a different way. And then get on it and start riding through some of the issues. There's a lot of ways of doing it. And part of the biggest problem we have is we don't get our horses focused on us. So when I'm riding a horse, and after he's learned a lot of these different things, I always make sure, after I get done riding a horse or doing whatever I'm doing with him, and I'm standing on the buckle, my horse has learned to stand, but and I'm talking to someone, but my mind is here. And the moment he's wandering, and I know what he's going to look at, the moment I slide my hands on the rein, close my fingers, and bring him right back to neutral. I stop it before it happens, and these are techniques that anybody can learn. To be aware, stop it before it happens, or before it gets too big and you can't deal with it. It's very important. These are techniques that are all involved in natural horsemanship. So the easiest way to learn these techniques so that you can start from the baby, to me, the person that designed something in natural horsemanship. Some of you may like him and some of you don't. He's a bit of a showman, and that's Pat Pirelli. So yeah, we go, oh, and some of us go, yay. But I have to give him credit. He designed something that makes sense to people, and that was the 7 games. And if you really understand it, after I've told you about touch, tactile, herd behavior, how they think, this makes sense. And then you can use it in training your horse to bring him to any level you want. So the 7 games basically are the friendly game. What's the friendly game? Does anybody know what the friendly game is? Not necessarily. No, that's friendly game is basically, it could be presenting yourself to the horse quietly. It could be breathing with him. And it could be just touching him with something, because some horses don't like to be touched. So can you use a tool? Use your hand first. And is he okay with a rope going over his back? Is he okay with his dressage whip touching him between his legs? So the friendly game is tactile. Is either tactile or standing there, your presence, your aura, right there in front of you to see, is he focusing on you? Does he know what you want from him? And then touching him. And not just touching him with your hands, then with ropes and plastic bags, and it goes on and on and on. That develops trust. That's the friendly game. There's no agenda. It's just, I'm some crazy human that feels like touching you with this. And do you like it? You want to look at it? You want to step on it? That's all it is. And then the porcupine game, the porcupine game is to get the horse to move out of your space. And that is basically just putting some pressure with your fingertips and just keep that pressure until he moves away. Your hand goes away. But don't keep going. I see this all the time. Porcupine, porcupine, and then they let go. I said, you just taught him how to push into you more. So they said, what do you mean? I said, just put the pressure, and the moment you feel nothing, just take the hand away. Don't keep, remove the hand sooner than later.
Do you increase the pressure as he doesn't move?
If he moves into you, you stay the same, then you just stay there.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he kind of backs it off, just let your hand go.
But if he's unresponsive, you don't keep applying more pressure.
No, you just keep that pressure there, because what he's going to do something. He's either going to move or he's going to come to you. He'll do something, and hopefully he makes the right choice. And then you have the driving game. And the driving game is basically sending the horse away. You know, can you show him the way? Can you move him by using any one of the tools that the Natural Horsemanship use? And that doesn't mean I can do it with a stick. I can do it with my hands now. I can just go like this and like that, and the horse will go. But you have to start with something. You need a tool to be an extension of your arm. That's why we use the tools, because we are two-legged, two arms. They're this long, 4 legs, and a neck out to here. So we need to have an advantage to play the game. Think of us playing in the game and having a little advantage. I wouldn't want to run next to a runner who's 7'4" and I'm this fast. I want like a half a mile up there so I can maybe get to the end. All right, then the other one is called the yo-yo game. And the yo-yo game is basically designed to help a horse move his feet forward and back lightly. And by using a technique, whether it's teaching the horse first how to move back by just pressing a little bit on his neck. There's a brachiocephalicus muscle that I use that I'll just squeeze, and he'll just go, oh, and I say, thank you. You could also shake the rope, and eventually they get to know, and sometimes you really have to shake it to teach them, and they back off. And then the pressure to come forward. And this particular thing, and I'm going to take out some of these tools, and I'll have somebody help me with it. When giving the pressure, the yo-yo game, meaning can you back up, but can you come forward, but not pulling them? Can you apply enough pressure, lock and hold? This is where you hold the pressure. And then the horse comes to you, that's when you let go. So that's kind of like a come along. So teaching the horse to gently come to you. And you know where that sometimes comes handy? When you're tying a horse up and he gets the pressure. When you've done this long enough, a lot of horses, they're pulled back and all of a sudden they'll go like this, because that's the release of the pressure. So you can hold, and he may be like pulling back, just hold, stand, take your judo stance, hold on, and then the moment he gives, you just open your hands. And then that's it. That's the yo-yo game. And then the other game, of course, is the circling game. Once you send the horse driving, you teach him how to circle. Very easy. And can he circle around you with you standing still? Can you move that circle? And the circling game isn't an egg. You try to teach him to stay out on the circle. This is where we use this carrot stick. Okay. So we're going to get down to some of the tools. So this is what you've all seen these. You can use a stiff stick and a string. And what we do with this. And the reason why I like this for some of the young horses, because some of them are a little snarky and cheeky and they want to come in. So all I have to do is press. Use this stick against them and don't give. And then they like oh, okay, I'll back off. And then as soon as they back off, the stick goes away. So this is kind of a guide for them to say, you need to stay, that's the circle. You need not to come in anymore. So I can rotate with them in the beginning, or I can stand still once they've learned how to do it. And then you start out with a little bit of a small circle. And once the circle gets larger and they're, they know what you want, then you can use your stick by going a little underhanded, by sending them out more. It's kind of driving them away. And so and you kind of figure out, let's make this nice circle. And the moment they get a little flat, you just toss it down towards their feet. And then they'll just make room and keep going. And it helps with them. You're teaching them a little bit of geometry. And if you're going to do 20-meter circles, why not? Let them learn the feel of that. And if you really want to be cheeky about it, get a stake in the ground, measure out a 20-meter circle, and put shavings around. See if you can keep that horse outside that circle. And you stay right in the middle. And then he starts to have a memory for that. And he knows that if you stay quiet and you offer him a deal, he stays out there, but as soon as he flattens it out, you can get into him and say, no, you need to go out there, and then you go back to your space. Eventually they'll go, just do this circle like that, and then you stay still. And once they've done it a couple times correct, end it, take a walk. And then maybe go back and do it again, and then take a walk. Don't just run them into the ground. So that's the circling game. And the sideways game is basically teaching your horse to move laterally, sideways. And this is excellent for developing the body, doing all your moves with dressage, shoulder in, haunches in. Do it on the ground first and teach them how to go sideways, everything lateral, and again, using pressure. Start with the hind end first, then you can go a little with the front end, then you can go with the rib cage, and before you know it, everything is going sideways. But you have to do it a little bit at a time. Don't get yourself frustrated. Then the squeeze game. The squeeze game is a very good game to play with a horse who's claustrophobic. So if you have a horse who doesn't like to go in between small spaces, I had some horses, they just don't like going in a trailer. And so the squeeze game is a great game to play. And what that basically is, and you can start this in an open space. You don't do it in tiny spaces. You get 2 rails, you put them on the ground, maybe 10 feet apart, 15 feet apart, and you drive your horses through that alleyway that you've made, back and forth, and then you keep closing it up. Then you do it next to a rail with a pole on the ground, back and forth, so he gets used to that. Then you do it in and out of his stall. Teach your horses how to drive in a stall. You are now driving, squeezing him, and then he gets to face you. So you can do all these things to make a horse more independent and more flexible on how he moves his body, independently of your hands holding onto the reins. The more you do some of these exercises, it will improve any riding discipline, I promise you. Being a 3-day event rider, one of the things I learned, some horses who were a little frantic and who were getting a little nervous about jumping and challenges, is I have a hunt field. It's a cross-country field, and it's a low-level cross-country field. It's all fenced in, and we actually not free jump them. I have them in hand, but eventually I've had horses that will stay right with me and will jump the jumps with me, and they love this. So that when you go to jump the jumps, I don't have to do anything but aim, grab the mane, and they go. They find their own spot, especially the ones who started to become stoppers. And you know that you don't have a physical problem. The vet has gone through it, but it's a little bit of a mental problem. This is the best way to bring a horse back. Let him jump on his own and find his own space. But you are doing it, you're basically doing it in hand. But that is the best way to get him over ditches, banks, and they love it. They think it's kind of fun. As soon as you'll get out there sometimes, you just point. They'll go and they'll jump over the banks and they'll do what they're going to do. And then when you get on their backs, and it's a great way for a young horse, you get on their backs if you have a good sidekick, and I have my sidekick here. She's my good eyes. And I will sit there, you know, just like a sack of potatoes, a balanced sack of potatoes, hold on to a neck strap, and she will run them over a bank, up and down a little something, a little ravine while I'm up there. So he's learning how to carry weight, and I'm just trying to stay balanced with the horse. and he learns to do it by himself. I mean, what a great way to teach a horse. I mean, it just gives him confidence. So if you screw up, he said, wow, I could do this. Just trust him. But that's what the natural horsemanship does. It's not just running in a round pen, doing the things you see done. It is all of this. It helps in all your riding disciplines. Any questions? Anybody got any problem horses? Okay, so you want to see a little bit about some of the tools that we use. Okay, so some of the tools we use, as you saw this, and this can be used just like a lunge whip. And I use this for these cheeky horses too that want to plow into me, and I'll just use this into their chest if they're insistent on coming in. It's very firm, so it's a good tool to have and use. I don't use it as, I mean, I will use it to move a lazy horse a little bit if he's not paying attention, and I'll spank behind them, where I'm just about nicking their heels behind. And you have to do it with a real long arm, not like this, because that makes you look aggressive. But if you take your arm and you do it this way, so you're going like this, that's a much nicer, it hits the ground, they're focused, oh, I have to move, rather than you going like that. Your body language is tight. So you have to learn how to use your tools in a soft, rhythmic, follow-through way. If you follow through with everything, your horse moves a lot better, okay? All right, so we also like using, I will never, ever, ever again use your typical webbed lunge line. You can kill yourself, you can kill your horse. I always use this, and I'm not telling anybody to change, but I'm just saying, this is a yacht rope. And why do we use this? Okay, why do we use it? It's a heavier, so it gets their attention. What else?
The swivel snap.
This, I don't always use a swivel, because if I have a horse that likes to throw his head around, I don't want this hitting him. So this is for a more advanced horse, or I wrap it up with a fleece, because I don't want it to hit him. Now there are times if I have a horse that's not paying attention to me and I have to back him off, I may use a technique that looks like a little, and this will kind of bump him, but I will put something on top of it. But the other reason is, if you hold on to this for a second, okay. So if I was to just go like, right now it's just laying here. Do you feel that? That's the difference between, I also train my horses in reins that are like this. So if you just touch this, and also when I go to pick up my reins when I'm working with a horse, I do this. Did you feel that? You don't feel that? A little vibration? Yeah, hold the material. Yeah, okay. Feel that little bit of kind of flow before I pick up the reins. So when I go to pick up the reins on my horse, again, this is more natural. So I use this technique, then I close my fingers, and now we have contact. Okay? And now the contact goes away. So that's how I start a horse to accept contact, especially the young ones. And the other thing I do when they're young and their mouth is changing, I will try to ride them in a bitless bridle with reins like this. So you can drop that on the ground. So I'll use this, and again, it's using natural techniques. Now your horse has to, if you've relied on a bit to stop your horse, don't do this. You know, go in a round pen and teach him how to stop. But if your horse understands how to stop correctly, by one rein at a time, you really should never try to stop your horse with two reins. I know this is what we're taught, you know, kick to go, pull to stop, but there's a better way of teaching them so that they will respond, that you can bend their head, maybe get them on a circle, because seriously, once a horse is going and he's hysterical, be a good rider and try to get to somewhere where you can stop him. But if you can get a horse to where he's going to bend, you can start to close his world up a little bit. You have a much better chance of slowing him down and stopping him. Once you do this, they do that. And I'll tell you, I learned that riding thoroughbreds. I love thoroughbreds because they're smart and they are pretty easy to train, and they are very forgiving. So this is what I'll use when I want to take, say a horse is just sour in the mouth. I have somebody that says, my horse won't accept the bit, I can't get him round. So I was, well, let's just try something. So I'll put him in, this is just a bitless bridle, and I use these reins because it's the same thing. When I slide my hand down and I close my fingers, as you felt, you feel that soft feel, and they'll kind of follow. So I'll use this, because when you use the leather reins, for me, for training, when I pick up a leather rein, it's dead. It takes a long time to get a feel through that leather. But anything that is either, that's why the cowboys use them. They use either horsehair, braided reins, these, because they have a lot of life to them. They really do, and they have a good weight to them. So if anybody wants to feel this, has anybody felt what these reins feel like? Okay.
Would you talk about the, I've heard trainers not like the clip-ons. What do you think?
Either or. I've used rings. I use it because if I'm getting on and off horses, or if I have to use.
I know it's convenient for the rider.
Yeah.
She didn't like it. She didn't think it made a good feel on the horse's mouth.
It doesn't. It does. Look, you got a metal ring here. So what the heck, you know, this little piece. It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's a preference. It's a preference. I've also used where the rein was in a ring like this. It was actually, it was just like this, and it was solid almost. But I don't mind these, and I use them because I have to get on and off. Well, I also want to take it if I have a horse who's having a problem, he can't get through a creek. I can get off, undo this, and drive him through. Or just let him go. Where do you want to go? You want to figure it out? You can only put one foot in, go hang out and have one foot. So that's what the cowboys will use, Makati reins. And a Makati rein, basically, it's about 18 foot of this kind of stuff with slobber straps that they hook through. And then you have your reins, and then attached to that is another rope. That's about 12 feet, 10 feet. And so again, when you need to train a horse, you can get off, you can hook the reins up, either tie them up a certain way, put it by your stirrup or a buckle, and then you take the Makati rein, you can drive your horse through the woods. It's single line driving. Has anybody double line drove here? Okay, so to start out, because that could be a disaster, you can start out single line driving. You just offer, and then you use a little bit of a crop on the other side gently to say, go ahead, take it. And then if he has to turn and look at you, fine. Do a figure 8, go back out again. They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. They won't have a problem. Anybody else need to feel any of this? Have you felt this before? What this feels like? Okay. So it's got, you know, it's got weight. Whoop, I'm sorry.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
And it's marine,
This is braided yachting rope. It's a yachting rope. I call it marine rope, but it's yachting rope.
You can buy them online, like
Yeah.
the different trainers have them.
Yep.
It's probably even no name.
Yeah, John Lyons had, and he had the slobber straps, and with the Makati rein and all that. So if anybody's never had their hands on one of these reins, this is what it feels like. And it's very smooth on your hands. You know, it's very easy to handle. And if you have a little arthritis, and although my hands look terrible, but they move very, very well. But it's so that when you grab it, it feels good. It's round around your fingertips, so it doesn't bother. Anybody else need to feel that? Sure. You can just pass it on down there.
I didn't see your truck in the back.
They're just rope reins, yeah. And they're made out of yachting rope. It's a braided rope rein. Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, and just you can slide it sometimes. Yeah, see how it slides? It has a nice feel. It's very kind. So if you want to let a horse know that you're coming at him, like, hey, buddy, and then he'll feel it. Sure. Okay, anybody else? Yeah, it's a nice feel. And you can get them a little thicker. They come a little thinner. Anybody else? Everybody's good? Good, good? Okay. So this is one. Now the other thing I do, how many people have had horses? Oh, and here's the, I like to use a rope halter to lead horses because it's designed to have even pressure. around the horse. Although one of the things I do, because I'm a little bit of a stickler about the occipital bone and where the first vertebra is, I will actually pad the top of this for the first few times with some young horses that may want to pull back. One thing, if they do pull back, you got to go with them. But I want to make sure that this is feeling soft around the top of their head, because many horses are very sensitive just behind their ears. So I will put a little bit of a fleece or a little rubberized tubing or something just to keep the horse protected in case of anything at all. And this is basically a rope. Again, it's a braided rope. It has the knots in strategically placed in positions so that the horse can feel a little pressure, but yet it's very light. It gives quickly. It's not like your leather, although I will ship in leather or ship in this with the leather pieces that they have now. They have new ones with the leather pieces, so I can go right away and work a horse. If he gets off the trailer and he's losing his mind, I can get right to work, so that if I have to bump him a little bit and make him feel a little bit of pressure of this, but the moment you let go, it's gone. It's over with. So I was going to ask somebody about their horse. Oh, so the first thing when I start somebody with natural horsemanship, one of the first things I notice is how horses crowd everybody and how everybody holds their horse. For an example, Jenny, you want to come up here for a second? This is my partner in crime over here, Jenny Surratt. She's living in my loft at my farm, and I've built a house on my property, so we're back in business again, working with horses, and she's done this with me for years, and she kind of disappeared for a while, for a couple of years, and now she's back. But, so the first thing I see, here's where it begins. I see people, so you're going to hold on that tight, you know, because I'm going to do something with you. So everybody's holding their horse here, and now you move around like you're going to graze. And then they're like, okay, they're like this, and they're all over the place. But if I did this and let go and say, go ahead, go where you're going. And now I'm going to get his attention, boom, and go again. And then he does it again, boom, go again. And then leave him alone. But people that are dragging and horses dragging them and come on, you got to come here, or they're talking to somebody and it's like this. And the horses, I mean, listen, I have seen it. And it's like, would you give this horse a chance to make a decision, the right decision, but you don't. You're hanging on. Or you don't let them make the bad decision and then correct them. So space is one thing. Keep your horse far enough away from you, whether it's at the side. Some people don't want them behind, so I want to make sure I can see them a little bit. If they want to get too far behind me, I just take the end of this and then just give them a little tickle. Whether it's in the rib cage, and you can practice this. You don't have to do it with your horse because most people can't aim right, but it takes a while. So if the horse is behind, if I'm walking my horse and he's either trying to get too close, I will just take this and go like that. So like, it's like, excuse me, don't get directly behind me. And then if they want to run up behind me, I didn't bring my mare tail. I take baling twine and I get the length of a tail, bunch it up, and I'll put it on one of these, and then I'll just hold it back here, and I'm walking, and that horse thinks he's gonna, and I'm like, just like a mare does, and he's like, what the hell just happened? So this is natural. So you have to use a little bit of your imagination. What does a mare do? It's the same thing. So you have to think like a horse. And then using this to get a horse's attention. I like using a flag to get a horse's attention, and that doesn't mean like this. I like going like this sometimes. Like if he's going bat crazy, I'll just take this and do that, and he's like, what the heck was that? It's not so much aimed at him, but it's to say, hello, I'm here. And then we can start doing something. And usually when they're like dragging around, and if I do this and he focuses on me, the first thing I'll do is start walking. Do something. Don't just look at them. And again, this is natural behavior. You know, anytime a herd member is going after a horse, he's going to start moving. He's not going to keep correcting. He's going to make a correction and then move and do something. And that's what you have to learn how to do with your horses. Your horse doesn't like a behavior, figure out why, fix it, get out of there. Do something else. So he doesn't want to think about it anymore. We have to know when to quit when you're working with horses. Training horses doing all these things, when they're good and successful, stop. Take a walk. You want to go back to it? Go back to it 2 hours later for 15 more minutes. Don't drill. Even with dressage. You get something good, give them a break. Go back to it half hour later or 15 minutes later. And then reward big time. They will look forward to wanting to do it longer. So that's the suggestion I can give to you. But why natural horsemanship works for me. It works for all disciplines because I can take every discipline and teach a horse to do it on its own naturally and make him happy. Any questions?
How long does it take to get a horse to get to the point of just following you around?
Forever. You always work on this. This is a way of life. It's a way of life, just like, you train for upper level dressage. It's a way of life. You're always searching for the better piaffe, the better passage, the better, whatever. The tempi changes. You want them cleaner. You want them more bright. You never give up on it. It takes as long as the time, it takes as long as it takes, as much of the quality time you put into it. And then when you're happy with that, you move on to something else. So that, it's a forever thing, but you just have to keep doing it. Yeah.
So once you have acquired a skill, and you say do it 15 minutes prior to riding about this.
Yes. And that's another thing. People say, I'll see people doing groundwork before they ride, but it's the same thing. The same thing. It's like they learn the cookie cutter thing and they don't change. You've got to use your imagination and change. Maybe one day you do a little more groundwork. It's a little bit different. Maybe it's less. But it's a little test ride. You may only do it for three minutes. Just to see, how does he feel flexibly? Can I move his hindquarters? Can he roll? Can he go forward? Get on. But if he's stiff and he's all over the place, dropping the shoulder, you maybe need to do something on the ground. Maybe a little shouldering along the fence to unlock his rib cage or whatever. So that's what I can say. Somebody else has had their hand up? Yes.
Yes, you were talking about how long does it take, but if you guys haven't tried it and been trying to practice for a while, like you said, it's a lifelong thing, but it's so fun. And
It
it's
is.
so
Yeah.
just satisfying for me to talk to the horse. It's great.
It is. It really is. And it's, it's not just doing this stuff. It's looking at him and asking him a question. Where are you today? What would you like to do? And not always have an agenda. I'll get on a horse sometimes and I'll say, this is not his day to do this. We're going to do something else. We're going to do something that'll make him happy. And then maybe I might sneak in something. Maybe I want to do that little piaffe that he was having a hard time with, but he's been out doing something else. I had him up and down a bank, walking up and down, going sideways on it. And again, using these things, not the same old way all the time. Sometimes I have little barrels. I have them step over the barrel and then go sideways on a barrel, just to give them proprioception, where they know where their body is and move. That helps a lot. Helps horses with a lot of problems with their neck and balance by going sideways with a pole underneath their belly. These are exercises that are very important for balance, independent thinking. So think about that.
I think it's very important to let go of our agenda sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, you have to. Yeah. And I'll see people ride 6-7 days a week, the same horse. Do something different. Take one of those days and go for a walk with them. Just hang out with them. And again, riding a horse, depending on what you're doing, but riding a horse to me, anyway, because I've had my hands on these horses, and they're riding them 6 days a week hard doing the same thing. It's not good for your horse's back. Number one, your horse was not meant to carry. Just not. They're a fight and flight animal. We've made that happen. So we have to take care of that. We have to make sure that we're doing the right thing for them, read them. When you feel them getting uncomfortable and stiff, drop the reins, go for a walk, do something else. Maybe come back and do a 3-minute little session and then get off. Yeah.
To, what's your name? Vicky's point, The hardest thing for me was, I rode English for 30 years, then met cutting horse people, and that was 30 years ago. So that was my first exposure to rope halters, the handy stick, groundwork. That was, we never did that. I was never taught that. It was, you held your horse like this.
Right. Oh, sure. I was taught this, years ago.
I was so, what? This halter? No, I like my leather halter with the brass nameplate and
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get hung up. You get hung up in the wear. Right.
It's so
Yeah.
foreign to me. It seems so weird, and yet I never saw better behaved, trained horses in my life.
It's
So
about
it just took me a
function.
long
Right.
time.
Exactly.
I mean, it took me a while to embrace and be open to.
Open-minded.
Yeah, so that now there are certain things that I would never go back to a leather
Right.
halter.
Yeah.
Or-
And it's also function. It becomes, when you learn how to use it and appreciate it, it's functional. That, Jenny and I used to go eventing. Well, I haven't shown now in about 12 years. I'll go to shows, I'll school people, but I don't have the interest anymore. But we would go to shows, and our warm-up was in rope halters, doing dressage and jumping. And I got so tired of it. And people said, oh, where's your bridle? So finally, the answer I gave them was, I don't want to get it dirty. Because I couldn't explain it. They were like, why are you riding in that? Where's your halter? Why are you doing that? And I finally just said, well, I just don't want to get my leather bridle dirty. So I'm riding around with rope halters, yes.
Can you go more into like how dressage and jumping and stuff mesh with like the natural horseman stuff? Because in my head, when I think dressage training, I think like super rigid and like I said, the side reins
No.
and stuff.
And the natural horsemanship, how it coincides with all of this, it's all about moving the feet. And it's moving the feet in the simplest way and in a very upper level way. So you can teach a horse to do shoulder in, to do a collected trot in hand, and then do it with your body being on their back, but you're teaching them a tempo, a rhythm, by maybe shaking the rope a little bit to slow them down, but yet, come on, do it this way. Then when you get on their backs, they've already done it independent of you. There's no bracing. So when you teach them through hard, hands, legs, there's always a brace. So to get a horse more supple and to work with you, you try to find another avenue to teach it to get rid of the brace. So that that's the whole idea of natural horsemanship too, is getting rid of the braciness in a horse. And when you get rid of that, a horse becomes more supple and more willing to work. But you've got to know, you've got to see the techniques, you've got to be taught the techniques. My horse is so stiff on this side. Well, why? Let me see you ride. I can figure it out within about a second. And then I'll get on and I'll show them what not to do. And the horse is kind of like, what the heck happened to that rein? They're looking for it, but it's in a different way. So if I was to go and bend them, I'll turn their head, and the moment they think they're gonna grab it, I let go. And they're like, whoa. So now they have to hold themselves up, and what you start seeing is everything, that shoulder girdle, start to come up. Because you're not doing this. Then they learn how to come up and through on their own. But you have to learn different exercises to teach this. That's natural, yes.
One of the most interesting experiences I had, because our barn was closed for 6 weeks because of COVID, we weren't allowed on the property. So going back, I had to reintroduce myself. So I brought my little stool and would go sit in the pasture and just watch. And then another thing I did was hand graze, but I mirrored their feet.
That's very good. Yeah, mirroring.
She stepped with this foot, I did. And then the other foot.
It's like a mare in a foal.
Right. It was
And and it may sound silly. Yeah, they start thinking like, oh, do you know my language? Really, it's what it is. It's, again, movement.
How did you do that? Did you read something?
Yeah. Warwick Schiller. Yeah, Warwick Schiller is he's,
Giving those ideas.
yeah, he was starting to look at the horse in a very different way and looking at them and making them kind of help him decide what they may want to do, how to move, how to connect with them. He was connecting with them without just grabbing them, but like mirroring them. So when you mirror them, they start looking at you, and then you'd walk away. Then they start following you. So that's about the connection, to connect with the horse, so that you kind of mirror them, then they turn to you. And it's a cool thing, because then they look at you in a different way. You know, it's just a little
And you
bit.
get to appreciate them on a different level.
You do.
My friend Alice back here and she and I talked about that, back in the day, you wanted your horse and had to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And now at this point in our lives, we want a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Life's too short. All that's going on now. Take a deep breath and enjoy your horses. We're so lucky to have them. Really. I mean, very lucky to have
Do you
them.
do clinics, Lydia, at your
Yes,
farm?
yes.
How do we find out about that?
I can give you my card,
Excellent.
and then you can email me, and I'll put you on my email
Do
list.
you have a Facebook page too?
I have a website, but I had a blog spot, but somebody hacked it. I would write a lot of articles on, do you want to own a racehorse? Really? And I explain that whole thing. All these people that think, okay, we're getting a racehorse, we're only spending $2,000 for it, now we're going to train it, it's going to be my superstar. Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. But anyway, I'll leave a bunch of cards here, and just I'll put them on this chair over here. And, or, you can, I travel too, so if you have horses at your farm and you have a specific issue, you can start out with one little thing. I can help you get through that, see what you think of it. And then if you like it, you can go on with it. If not, nobody says you have to. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.